Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome in 17 and some change. I'm Ecudes 17, here to bring you my 2 cents on this Wednesday, on this hump day. I appreciate every one of y'all for joining in today. So let's get into it. I'm not going to waste any time with any side quests or anything like that today. I'm gonna go straight into the topic of the day. Last week we talked about different things: government, foreign policy, religion, taxation, um, campaign finance, and stuff like that. Today, we're going to start part two. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is the series that we're doing is our official policy positions across the board on various political topics. Some of the most important political topics in today's day. So today it's going to be law, safety, and public order. More specifically, we'll go over criminal justice and prisons. We'll go over policing, um, and then gun rights, and we'll see how we're doing on time at that point. Free speech, harassment, and threats will probably be covered next week unless we don't have. Um, that'll probably be a next week thing. Most likely, not definitively. We'll see how it goes, but most likely that'll be a next week thing. So we're gonna start off with criminal justice and prisons. Um, and again, this is a bullet point system, so I'm just kind of gonna go through the bullet points, and that should um, jog my memory on um, various things. um, we see. All right, so I'll be able to kind of get my gist, my main point across vis-a-vis these bullet points. I'm just kind of looking through them. Um, so the first thing that we mention, that we believe, is that the criminal justice system should prioritize deterrence. Um, so the the main goal of the criminal justice system to exist um, shouldn't necessarily be punishment. Um, yes, there will be, punishment is part of it, and exclusion is part of it. But I mean, the main goal is deterrence. So, hold on. I'm just gonna close this window because somebody is mowing their just started too. Like they just started to mow when I hit record. But so the main priority in criminal justice, as far as we're concerned, as far as I'm concerned, um, you know, isn't to be a financial industrial complex. The criminal justice should begin prior to crimes being committed. So what that looks like is, and this is a societal effort, right? So it looks like a commitment on a national scale to encourage, um, nonviolent behavior, to encourage, personal responsibility, to encourage doing the right thing regardless of who's watching. I think a lot a lot of problems start with culture. A lot of problems start at the home. There needs to be a concerted effort to not glorify things that are negative, um, to a thriving, safe nation. Does that mean rap and rock and roll and violent movies and Grand Theft Auto and things like that can't exist? That's not what it means. I've always personally, um, I struggled with it a little bit when I was a teenager, but by and large, even then, I've always kind of been able to compartmentalize and understand that, this is entertainment. This is just representations of, um, the worst part of life. It's not something to imitate, right? We need to do a better job. In our communication as far as educators are concerned, as far as entertainers, as far as culture, as far as parents, as far as everybody is concerned. And I'm sure there's an effort by from all of these levels, but um, government needs to be heavily involved as well, um, to just and it's about consistency and not corny, right? You got to be consistent and not corny. Just um, I remember the Dare program, and it's a bad example because the program, for anybody who's not aware, was a program that um, try to teach kids to not do drugs. It's just unfortunately, uh, in all of their videos, they made it so that it always looked like the cool kids were the ones doing drugs, and they always made it look like the lamos were the ones that were, going to school and doing the right thing and getting an education and stuff like that. You know, we somehow have to get the message across that it's consistently through every level of society. Um, we have to over and over and over again illustrate how it's not okay, it's not cool, it's not any of these things to be a degenerate, right? It's not okay to litter, it's not cool, it's you have to put your carriage back, like it's not okay to stab people, it's not cool, you know what I mean? Um so it's lying, cheating, stealing. These are bad things, and we just have to, uh, not to be redundant here, but we have to be redundant. We have to consistently get this message across through all levels of everything of our entire society. Has to be on the same page in this messaging. Um, you know, um, our criminal justice system. We prioritize deterrence, and we should also prioritize, protection of the general public, right? Which I think is kind of, almost pretty much obvious, right? People, they by and large, most people they want to just live peaceful lives, unbothered lives, and not have to worry about criminals. And it's our job as a society to make sure that they don't have to worry about criminals, right? So culture acts as a deterrent. Presence acts as protection. Um, this is also as opposed to uh, a cash grab, right? We're not, like I said on the first bullet point, like the the goal isn't to use the justice system and to use the law to make cheap money, right? So, for example, when in my city there's typically a parking ban when it snows, and so you can only park on one side of the city, and the city makes on the street, sorry, and the city makes so much money during these snowstorms because they go around and they ticket everybody, right? They tow everybody. They tow and or ticket everybody, and they make thousands and thousands of dollars every time there's a major snowstorm. And I'm not saying that they should not be doing that. I'd prefer if they didn't. I don't really like these parking bans when it snows. I mean, it's hard enough to find parking as it is, and then now you're having to deal with, snow in the way. I think it would be preferable if they got smaller snow plow machines, um, more mobile ones that can kind of, you know, um, do like a smaller lane or whatever. Um, but and then you could stagger them. You could go two, you could go one, and then one's like slightly behind it, so it's pushing to one side. Whatever you need to do, right? But the point is that the priority, um, we should prioritize. We should prioritize deterrence. We should prioritize protection of the public as opposed to cash grabs or punitive measures and things like that. Um, Rehabilitation should be available when it's realistic, and some people may not be capable of safely returning to society. Those those two go hand in hand, right? Like you want to see a path to rehabilitation. You want to see a legitimate um, system that tries to, from inside the prison, from inside the jails, that tries to teach people a better way, that tries to show them the light, that tries to show them, different ways of coping, different ways of finding success, um, and stuff like that. You know, this kind of a lot of times goes hand in hand with poverty. Um, Sometimes those who are disenfranchised by a system doesn't don't want to play by the rules anymore. Um, and while that's an understandable sentiment, it's still not an excuse to to harm others and to lie, cheat, steal, and stuff like that. Um, and I address that through other sections of this ideology, that political ideology that is going to be tied to this brand, right? Um, so there, when we get to housing and stuff like that, there will be um, not socialist, but social programs, right? There will be social programs that help out, and there will be funding for that type of stuff. Um, so these paths don't always look like dead ends, but whatever you have to do it without being a criminal. Um, Even if nothing else changed as far as like capitalism is concerned. If you have to live in your truck, like, there's plenty of homeless people that aren't necessarily criminals, right? Like, I don't think poverty uh, is an excuse for crime. Um, but especially the basic things, like I said, lie, cheat, steal, harm, these types of things. Like I said, also, some people might not be capable of safely returning to society. Some people, they're not rehabilitable. That's not truly a word, but some people, they're beyond hope, right? They're not. There's nothing that you can do for some people to fix their mind, to fix their ways. Some people are just, I'm trying to be a little bit more clinical than hyperbolic, or, eh, you know, eh, instead of calling them, like, some people are just plain evil, some people are just plain fucked. Um, but it's pretty much it's pretty much agreed upon. For example, for a small example, it's pretty much agreed upon that narcissistic personality disorder, for example, there is no cure for, right? Now, am I saying like all narcissists should be in jail for life? No, that's not even close to what I'm saying, right? NPD is a very complex topic, and depending on the type of society that you live in and the decisions that individual narcissists make, like, that's way too broad of a stroke. I'm just bringing that up to illustrate one example of how um, certain aspects of individuals' psyches are immutable. Um, so there are people that they're stone cold killers, and they're going to remain stone cold killers no matter what. There's no hope for some people. Um, I don't believe that everybody can be healed and fixed and redeemed and stuff. Not on a societal level, maybe through Christ, maybe through the Lord, maybe on a spiritual, uh, some sort of spiritual reckoning, or something like that, between them and their higher power, but not uh, on a practical level for reentry into society. And I think some things that you do don't deserve that, right? Like, certain types of murder, premeditated and stuff like that, they don't deserve another chance. You know what I mean? Premeditated murder when you were in your right minds, even though I think anybody who does murder is somewhat crazy, but it's whether you can rationalize or understand that it's wrong, and that there's uh, and or that there's consequences. Um, dangerous people should be separated from society. Um, some, like I was just saying, the some offenders may require permanent confinement, right? Some offenders, um, some offenders they going hand in hand in what I've been saying. Sorry, I'm just kind of looking looking ahead at the same time. But yeah, some of them they can't. They just can't do it. Um, and we don't want them. Certain extreme cases. Um, with all that being said, I would abolish the death penalty. I'm not a fan of the death penalty. I mean, uh, I don't think it's our. I think it's our right, and it's a fine line, right? But I think we're more in our right to choose who we separate from society, who can't play nice, than we are in our right to choose to end lives. I think once it comes to ending a life, then that's a different story. I mean, giving um, active threats get eliminated, and if there was, a Michael Myers type serial killer, I wouldn't be opposed to him getting shot dead. So maybe there's a little bit of hypocrisy there. Um, but you never know if the case was wrong, if um, different things like that. Um, but and I think it kind of makes you look a little barbaric as a society when you implement um, the death penalty. You know, um, now I'm open to pushback on that. This is one that I have a little bit of leeway on, but this is kind of where we are right now. Um, Here's a big one. Prisons should not function as violent survival environments. Like there's nothing worse than, I mean, there's plenty of things worse, but it's a tragedy. It's a travesty to send hardened criminals or not so hardened criminals into a system where they have to become hardened. Um, I feel like most jails and most prisons, like they're concrete uh, jungles, and not in the uh, city sense, but in their own form. And it's more often than not, almost always survival of the fittest. And the way that they learn to interact, the mindset that they garner while they're in jail, while they're in prison, helps absolutely nobody, right? It's a system that is designed to, maybe not on purpose, but the way the system runs now, it makes individuals double down on their stinking thinking. Um, it is so uh, far removed from what you want. a civilized population to look like, um, that it really does no good for anybody. I can't put a percentage on it, but a vast majority of people who go to jail, who go to prison, uh, come out even more aggressive. Um, and is it just because you're in an environment full of antisocial individuals? Maybe, but I think it's also has to do with the next point that I'm going to make, which is um, the current concrete and steel prison culture should be replaced with secure, clinical, humane institutions. None of this, and so corrective, uh, none of this, you know, metal beds with like one sheet and like half a pillow and like toilets that are exposed to like the rest of the world and like barely any space to move around and like uh you know that this is not conducive to mental health. It's not conducive. I mean, most of these guys have mental health. It's not conducive to recovery. It's not conducive to growth. It's not conducive to humanity, right? And you know, you go into a place that has terrible beds, exposed toilets, stinky caca, bad food, no windows, fucking aggressive people all around you. And you know, it's no wonder why there's not going to be any healing done. So, a correctional facility should resemble highly controlled treatment environments more than chaotic cages. So they should look more like, you know, clinic like hospitals more than they look like jails. Um, Larger rooms, more windows, brighter colors. Now you don't want it to be luxury. You don't want it to be the you know the Ritz, but you also don't want uh you don't want it to be something that's that's stress and anger inducing 24/7 either, right? Because that's more of what's going to make people double down on the hatred and make people double down on the bitterness that they have and harden their hearts, right? Um, you know, you keep treating people like animals, they're gonna act like animals, and whether they acted that way before they came in or not, like you can't just continue to reinforce that um, by putting them in cages, right? You know, people who don't, the less fights you get into, you know, the more space you have, the more freedoms you have. Um, and you can have a tier system and have opportunities for people to get more and more freedom, more and more space, more and more comfort, um, based on good behavior. Um, And then facilities should have a substantial number of strong, well trained male and female security personnel. So, kind of like correctional officers, right? Um, but yeah, you need to staff these places well, right? You can't have unsupervised. This is how like a lot of the fights start. You can't just have unsupervised or like three COs for like a pod of 50 people or whatever it is. Like no, you need to have numbers, and you need to have uh, order and control and oversight um, and different things like that, you know? Now, I don't believe in solitary confinement the way that it exists now. Um, just throwing people in the hole to make them go even crazier. You know what I mean? And I know there's a fine line of how much do you take away from people who can't behave versus how much do you integrate them when they do. But uh, I think a lot of it starts with a good amount of staff, right? Strong, well trained staff um, is, is is crucial. Um, so exile, I flirted with the idea of exile before, right? I've always flirted with that idea. They've done that in the past through different ancient civilizations. Would just send somebody out with like a loaf of bread and go figure it out yourself. Loaf of bread, a bottle of water, whatever. Go. They send them off out of the gates, right? And I've always flirted with that idea, but I think that could only occur through a formal agreement with a country willing to receive the individual. So, kind of like I said, there should be a proxy nation for migrants who are waiting for admittance into the United States. Um, it would be great to have some sort of nation state that would accept our criminals and allow us to banish them to there. Now, maybe we would pay these countries. Um, I know it's kind of like, you know, or passing the buck, uh, so to speak. Um, but it's definitely an idea to flirt with. Um, I think banishment from a nation is more humane than entrapment in a prison, and it's more humane than the death penalty, right? Just kick them out. Um, maybe we have a second island. We had an island one time. Was it Alcatraz? Where it was, just for prisoners. Maybe we do something like that. Um, So dangerous criminals should not simply be abandoned in another country, meaning we need the consent of the other country. We can't just send them there, without their consent. And then the humanitarian proxy nation proposed for displaced immigrants would not be used for violent offenders, right? So we wouldn't send them to like I was beginning to say, we wouldn't send them to the proxy nation that we had set up for immigrants, for migrants. All right, so we'll go over policing, and I think we could kind of stop it there. So I'm gonna say like right off the bat that um, I wouldn't, I am more pro police than anti, by far. I've considered joining law enforcement many times. Now, I don't I'm not P's and Q's enough. I'm not cross my T's, dot my I's enough. I have a little bit of an edge. There are laws that I don't necessarily like agree with. Like I'm not like perfect. Like they make it seem like the like what they want. And people say all this, that, and the other thing. It's not easy to become a police officer, right? Like the screening, the background checks, the lie detector tests, like it is such a rigorous process. They really make sure you're a freaking fucking you don't do drugs, you haven't done drugs, you don't steal, like you don't have any criminal records, you don't have this, that, and the other thing. Now, I'm sure there's exceptions all throughout the country, but by and large, it's very difficult to become a police officer, and they're entrusting people with the highest level of responsibility that you could trust them with, which is carrying a gun around in society and stuff like that. And it's it's such an amazing job. It takes such an amazing type of individual. It's a shame that they have uh, their reputation has been tarnished through the bad apples that do exist, through the fact that psychopaths do apply and get in. But if you really think about like the scope of what the job you for, asks them for, um, it's really amazing, right? Like they have to be um, hardened enough to go toe to toe, eye to eye, with some of with the worst criminals that society has to offer, and stand their ground. And I mean, given they have an entire gang behind them, but they have to really put their foot down when it comes to like some of the roughest, toughest, meanest, most entitled people that exist. But then at the same time, like they could turn around one call later and have to patiently uh, help out the old lady, or you know or the child that needs help, and have empathy, for like the most vulnerable people of society as well. It takes an amazing mix of honesty and bravery and toughness and compassion to be a good police officer. I think a vast majority of uh, the general public, I mean, anybody who's worked with the general public knows what it's like to work with the general public. But furthermore, I think a vast majority of people would crash the fuck out trying to do that job. And the fact that they have to see death and they have to see um, people, everybody that they see, they're almost everybody that they see, they're seeing on the worst days of their lives. And now we live in a society, I didn't like this defund the police thing. I really, really didn't like you know, uh, what the cops had to go through. Now, given I did not, I thought the George Floyd incident was egregious. I thought that cop, that Chauvin, was completely in the wrong. I thought they should have gotten the hell off of Mr. Floyd's neck. Right? I think that was absolutely egregious. I think that was murder. I think that was gross. It was difficult as hell to watch. And I think, you know, anger was justified, national protest was justified, but it wasn't. But saying all cops are bastards, pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon, um, uh, eh, eh, uh, defund the police. I think all this stuff was excessive. I think they should have protested to get Chauvin uh, in jail, which he ultimately ended up going to jail, prison. Um, but the national narrative that came, um, oh, the cops are they're brutalizing people. They're racist. It's a racist institution. Um, it was just it's not what you need for a nation. We need to respect and admire and appreciate and support our law enforcement because most people don't want to do that job and most people, unless you're one of those that don't mind living in the wild west, most people that's the first place they call when they have a situation. Now now does that mean that like I've already alluded to, all cops are great or anything? No, but it's certainly not all cops are bastards, right? It doesn't take many to ruin things for the mass, but it shouldn't be that way. We should compartmentalize better. I do, um, I do, shudder to think about, individual cases of abuse of power, um, before body cams, and we'll get into this a little bit when I hit these bullet points. Now, I know some cops are absolute power tripping assholes, and I know that you know, um, especially in the past, for there's been uh, there's been swarms of people, there's been way too many people, um, that have faced abuse, physical abuse, from officers and things like that. Now, I think the percentages have always been minuscule, but before body cameras, um, it was something to talk about, right? It was a legitimate conversation to be had. Like, okay, what about the 1-2% of cops that beat the living shit out of people? It's like, all right, well, let's talk about that, right? But things are different now, and I think it was different before 2020, right? And if any of these changes that I'm mentioning came because of 2020, then that's at least something good that could be extracted from it. And let me let me let me talk a little bit about what I mean. I believe that modern American policing has strong accountability, and this is because body cameras have significantly strengthened transparency. I think every department should wear body cameras. I think this is almost perfect. Like, this is like as amazing of a thing as you can ask for. Like, every single, like, to have every police interaction with the public being on film, I think is beautiful, right? Um, Now, most people will say since that's happened, we've realized, we've seen that, you know, it's the general public most more times than not that are being unreasonable. But so they have strong accountability. They have strong accountability because body cameras exist and have strengthened transparency. Um, but police officers, they also face scrutiny from their supervisors, right? Any use of force, anything questionable, any complaint, um, and even on a regular basis without these things, their supervisors will review their procedures, they'll review their body footage, and and they'll face scrutiny from their upper ups on a regular basis. And then they also face scrutiny from courts and defense attorneys. Whenever a police officer does an arrest or uses force, their client, the perk or the individual, the accused, ends up in court. And even if they can't afford a lawyer, they get a free lawyer. And these defense attorneys scrutinize the cops. The cops have to go on stand in front of the judge, in front of the jury, in front of the prosecutors, and they have to explain why they did what they did, and it has to make sense. And they will get prodded and they will get probed and they will get asked in three, four different ways from different angles. And the defense attorney will do everything in their power to make their client look innocent and to make the police officer look wrong. And then to top it all off, furthermore, they also face scrutiny from the general public, right? Um, so they go viral all over the place. Everybody's watching them, everybody's recording them. Um, so they have body cameras. They have supervisors. They have courts. They have the general public. Like there is uh, uh, layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of accountability built into the job, which is another reason why I couldn't do it. You know what I mean? Uh, I wouldn't want to have to answer to all these fucking people. You know what I mean? Like I, I get a little bit upset with somebody, and I'm like, "F you, bro," whatever the case is, and I use a little bit, and I get a little rough with somebody or whatever, and then you have to answer to that. And like I said, most people would crash out if they're dealing with the level of entitlement that the general public has, the level of narcissism that our society has nowadays, right? So most people could not handle that scrutiny, that internal and external scrutiny that police have to handle. Um, Also, nowadays we have mental health counselors who accompany police in a percentage of calls and stuff like that, and I think that's a very positive development. They go on the front line, and even they're having a problem, right? I mean I see it firsthand. I know a handful of people who work in that capacity with police, and you know sometimes even these clinicians, these people with master's degrees in psychology, struggle to calm down. Like, you gotta understand, some people are effing crazy, doc. Some people are nuts. And even these clinicians are having trouble being like, dude, calm the fuck down. Like, stop yelling all over the place. Stop throwing shit. Stop, like chill. and it's not easy. It's not easy, like, um, dealing with the worst of the worst that society has to offer. It's just absolutely not. Um, so so I think the current checks and balances are close to ideal. I don't know what more you can ask for outside of those five things that I mentioned. Right? I think police institutions and government, they've made substantial efforts to answer criticism while continuing to protect and serve. Um, Now, I think genuine misconduct should obviously still be handled through existing accountability systems, right? And I see it, but it should continue. Like, if a police officer abuses their power, they should absolutely, um, be prosecuted. They should absolutely lose their badge. They should absolutely, face consequences and be demoted and all these different things, right? No doubt about it. I'm not saying cops are never wrong and they're above the law. They're absolutely not. They enforce the law, but they're not above the law and they're not perfect. And for the 10th time, in this dialogue, I'll mention that yes, some of them do suck, right? It's not just the general public that sucks all the time. It's just the general public sucks most of the time, and the cops suck some of the times. You know, if we're looking at numbers, if we're being honest and looking at numbers and realizing that there's millions of interactions between police and individuals on a daily basis, but there's only a fraction of a percent of those million interactions that go haywire, that result in something cucka on the behalf of the police officer, right? Um, so, uh, so I maintain that the larger present problem is cultural hostility towards police. It's this entitlement mindset. It's this short-term gratification, not being able to take no for an answer, narcissism. I see it so many times where, like, I've watched so many, I want to say hundreds. I've watched so much police um, body cam footage and stuff like that. And I used to watch cops as a kid. I've watched hundreds. Yeah, I can safely say I've watched hundreds of hours of police interactions. And, like, just like there's narcs, and like there's some people that they physically, mentally, they cannot uh submit. Like, they cannot, their brain just will not allow them to comply. And it's so fucking weird. It's so weird. It's so gross to see. Um it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. They will fight every step of the way. They can't relinquish control. It's trauma, right? They literally cannot relinquish control, and this is how they end up getting into physical spats and physical altercations and getting arrested forcefully, because they just can't comply. It's not in their fucking psyche. Uh, so many people, and then um and then you have freaking TV, and you have uh uh different institutions and different advocacy groups, and the loony left, uh talking about, F the police and stuff like that, and all cops are bastards, and 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 just um, providing that culture, providing that rhetoric, and the cultural hostility towards police is not good. That's the issue. That is the issue when we're talking about police. Um, that's the main issue, right? Um, like I said, people provoke, they harass, they antagonize officers. Um, and you can't live like that. And lastly, I'm just reiterating: society should admire and respect law enforcement much more than it currently does. Um, and that's that. That's my take. That's our take. That's our position on the situation. Okay. So thank you guys for joining. Thank you guys for being alive, for watching 17 and some change. Um, Make sure to check out the website, TheWayofEcudes.com. That is the way of ECUDES.com. On that website, you will find blog, you will find essays, you will find a free to use philosophy forum, you'll find sneakers, you'll find books, um, and soon you'll find a portal to our next, our 6, 7, our next major project. So do that. You can also check me out on IG, which is Ecudes17, simple, the number 17 on IG. But once again, thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for existing. Safety and peace. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Goodbye.